Okay, here we go. You might already know that the presidential election is decided by the Electoral College. You may even know that in two recent elections, the candidate with the most votes lost the election. In 2000, Al Gore lost to George W. Bush despite having 500,000 more votes. And in 2016, Clinton lost the election to Donald Trump despite having roughly 3 million more votes than Trump. About 5% more votes, and she still lost. You may have already known these things. But what you may not know is that under the Electoral College system, it's possible for a presidential candidate to win despite having less than 25% of the popular vote. That's right, it's possible for a presidential candidate to lose even if they win the popular vote by a 75% landslide. 75%. How is that possible? How could it be that in the world's leading democracy, the President of the United States, the highest office in the country, can be selected by a tiny minority of the votes? To understand, we have to look at how the Electoral College system is set up. Each state gets one Electoral College vote for each of their senators and representatives. We know every state has 2 senators, but the number of representatives is a little bit more complicated and partially based on the population of the United States. Every 10 years, based on the US Census, the states get to split exactly 435 representatives, and they are guaranteed to get at least 1 representative per state, regardless of population. So every state gets at least 3 Electoral College votes. Oh, and the District of Columbia, not a state, also gets 3 Electoral College votes. It's complicated, but that's another story. The total is 100 senators plus 435 representatives plus 3 for District of Columbia, which equals 538. And that's why you need at least 270 electoral votes to win the presidential election. Okay, so far that doesn't seem so bad. So what's the problem with that? Here's where 2 major things go wrong. Problem 1 is that because of the minimum 3 electoral votes per state, a small state like Wyoming, with a population of just 600,000, gets 3 electoral votes, or about 1 vote for every 200,000 people. And a state like Texas, with a population of 30 million, gets just 36 electoral votes, or about 1 vote for every 750,000 people. What that means is that a vote in a small state like Wyoming or Alaska is worth more than 3 times as much as a vote in a large state like Texas, California, or New York. Yes, the Electoral College system is that crazy, but it gets even worse. There's a second, even bigger problem. Virtually every state has also decided that their Electoral College votes for the president are going to be all or nothing, meaning if half of the people vote for candidate A, but candidate B gets just 1 more vote in a close race, the state will give all of its Electoral College to candidate B, even though candidate B won by just a single vote. So in a highly populated state like California, it takes just 1 extra vote for a candidate to win all 55 of the Electoral College votes of the state. So when you combine the fact that small states are overrepresented with the fact that states do an all or nothing vote for the president, the combination of these allow for a presidential candidate with over 75% of people's vote to lose the election. Imagine the chaos that could be caused if the will of over 75% of the population was overwritten simply because we have an archaic system for the election of the President of the United States. But there are even more problems with the Electoral College. The benefit of the Electoral College system was intended to be for the vote of the ordinary citizens to be overwritten if they chose unwisely and were fooled into voting for a corrupt politician. This has never happened. Not the corrupt politician part, but the changing of people's vote. In fact, in most states, Electoral College voters have taken an oath to vote for a candidate based on the outcome of the votes in that state. That means the Electoral College voters themselves are actually powerless if they uphold their oath, which might be a good thing. That is, of course, if they uphold their oath. And that brings us to another problem. While unlikely, it's technically possible for the Electoral College voters, who are average citizens picked by each party to represent them, to vote against the will of the people and vote however way they want. I wish I was making this stuff up. But imagine the chaos that it would create if the Electoral College of a state voted for the opposite candidate than what the state picked. And that changed the outcome of the election. That would be a nightmare scenario that is currently possible under the Electoral College system. Essentially, while we have the Electoral College system, anything goes. The president is not even officially elected on election day in November. Instead, the president is elected on the first Monday after the second Wednesday of December. Yeah. We don't even get to vote for these people. And if all that was not bad enough, there are even some unintended consequences too. Some of our most populated states lean heavily Republican or Democrat. California, for example, represents about 40 million people and about 55 electoral college votes. That's a lot. But in California, in current times, it's virtually guaranteed that the Democratic candidate will win all 55 electoral votes. All of them. So a presidential candidate doesn't even need to campaign in California because the outcome is already known. Even worse is that the people of these states know which way their state will vote. And as a result, the people are less likely to show up to vote. After all, why bother voting when the state gives all of its electoral votes to just one candidate? Imagine if you voted for a Republican in California. Election after election, millions of Republican voters get exactly 0 electoral votes for their candidate. And the problem is not unique to California. That is the reason every presidential election comes down to a handful of what are known as swing states. Swing states are states where the election outcome is not well known. It can go either Republican or Democrat. In the 2016 election, there were just 16 swing states, representing just a tiny fraction of the US population. But because of the importance of winning swing states, every presidential candidate focuses on just the swing states and ignores the rest of America, because that is the only way they can ensure victory of the Electoral College votes. This is literally as crazy and undemocratic as one could possibly dream up for a system to elect the most important office of the United States. So here's the thing. We're not powerless about this. Every other election in the United States is democratically decided by the majority of voters. The only election that is not democratic and not elected by the majority is the President of the United States, the most important, highest office in the country. And we can change this, and we must change this if we want to protect our democracy. If you want to know how, then subscribe to this channel. I'll answer that question in a future video. And I intend to make more videos about interesting topics. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.